It's time to spotlight the tech sector. Joining us now is Daniel Newman, the CEO of Future Room. Daniel, thank you so much for being with us today on the floor of the NYSE. Nice to have you with us. We've got such a big week of earnings with several of the Mag 7 starting to report today. What specifically are you looking for from some of the big name companies that we're going to hear from?
Yeah, hi, good morning. It's great to be with you here at the New York Stock Exchange. It's going to be a massive couple of days. Over the last few weeks, I've been predicting fireworks. Overall, a very strong set of earnings from the majority of the big tech names. But these next 2 days, this afternoon, tomorrow, with 4 of the Mag 7 all reporting, and then, of course, coming off the back of the recent Nvidia GTC day that saw Nvidia surge above $5 trillion, we are expecting to hear a lot about what AI is doing to drive business for these massive companies. Google, Microsoft, Amazon. All of them have these cloud businesses, and these cloud businesses sell their services to millions of enterprises. So all of this kind of bubble talk, all of this circular spending talk, is the prove it moment is going to be, do these companies like Google, like Microsoft show cloud growth, and can they speak to how their bookings are growing and how these growing bookings are attributable to that massive CapEx investment that all of them are making?
Yeah, that RPO number is certainly going to be in focus. As far as the big 3 that you mentioned there, what are your expectations for their cloud growth?
Yeah, so I think that you're going to see the fastest growth come from Azure. I predicted a number of over 37%. For Google, I'm looking for something to come in a little bit over 30%. And with Amazon, they've lagged, and it's been an infrastructure challenge. They didn't build the capacity fast enough to support their customer base. I'm hoping they're going to be able to talk about how they are spending, investing, and overcoming that. But I have their number at 18%. But remember, their overall number is so large that some of that smaller percentage growth gets caught up in those laws of large numbers.
And I know that you were able to attend the GTC conference yesterday. Just some massive headlines coming out of this. Nvidia topping that $5 trillion market cap, like you mentioned. I'd love to know some of your key takeaways, and then we can discuss some of the big headlines that came out, too.
Absolutely. This was Jensen Huang's best GTC keynote yet. First of all, he did come out waving the U.S. flag. We know there's been some tension with their loss of the access to the China market, and I think he's still pushing for that. But he also took a lot of time to acknowledge built here with their new Blackwell servers being produced in the United States, talked about a visibility between the now and the end of 2026 to $500 billion in revenue. And I think that, of all the announcements that were made yesterday, was what sent the stock surging. He basically showed the path, showed visibility, committed to the fact that this demand is very real. The hyperscalers are going to spend big. And then he announced all those partnerships. So he had CrowdStrike, he had ServiceNow, which reports today. He had the DOE partnership. He had the Nokia partnership. He made a bunch of those kinds of announcements. And those are the companies, like I said, the cloud companies that are selling to enterprises. And those are the other companies selling security services, selling 5G, 6G services. And then, of course, seeing the investment the U.S. wants to make in making sure we lead the world in science. Nvidia continues to have that tailwind.
All right, so Daniel, a lot to touch on there. The first one I want to touch upon is this $500 billion in potential revenue visibility. Do you think that that's a realistic figure from what you were able to see, or are we starting to see some shades of this bubble forming?
Yeah, I'm not seeing that. Of course, there's going to be some companies that get dragged along. They'd probably get exuberant valuations because they're getting pulled by this trend line. But these Mag 7 companies, these largest infrastructure companies, their businesses are very real. Their earnings are very real. Their customer bases are very real. So I'm not overly concerned about that. Of course, talking a $500 billion number, basically meaning Nvidia is going to be able to do over $300 billion next year, 70+% gross margins, nearly 55% net income. You start to be able to re-rate the company and see how that forward multiple gets them to something that's reasonable, still in that sub 40 range. Of course, people would like to see it in the 20s. Tesla always runs hot, but for Nvidia, if it's coming in 30, 35, even forward with this kind of growth, you have to feel optimistic that this AI trend line is secular, it's long term, and it's not a bubble as a whole.
Okay, so you mentioned a bunch of the important partnership announcements that were made. You said CrowdStrike, Uber, the DOE, and then there's several others. Of the ones that were announced, what one do you think has the potential to be the most transformative for NVIDIA's long-term growth story to be a contributor to them reaching that potential milestone?
Yeah, there's so many great ones. What I liked about the partnerships, and I know you want me to name one, but was that so many of them are contributive, but it was like dozens of different partnerships that all have multi-billion-dollar impacts, but it wasn't that sort of overly single concentrated deal that's going to get you to that result. I mentioned CrowdStrike. I really like that partnership. I think AI is going to create this massive growth in sort of black ops, negative uses of AI for security reasons, getting those agentic tools to the edge so that we can basically prevent people from being hacked, prevent people from losing important data, or even worse, being held to ransomware, things like that. CrowdStrike is a partner. I think securing the network is going to be a big role for AI, and of course, NVIDIA doing it together with them was a great step forward.
So let's break down some of these deals then, since they all are going to be potentially an integral part of this long-term growth story. You mentioned CrowdStrike. How do you think that CrowdStrike plays into this deal with Palantir? Because Palantir is responsible for so much of our defense tech right now, and also had that recent report that there may be some glitches in the system, some potential cybersecurity issues there. Is that a potential, a three-way partnership that we could see emerge in sort of a protectionary way?
Well, of course, how these companies decide to intertwine their businesses will continue to play out over time. But what I would expect is that anything that can ensure and secure these important sets of data, especially, you've got critical national security data, you of course have critical private and personal data, you got financial transactions, all of these things need to be taken care of, and utilizing the best set of technologies, and of course using NVIDIA's backbone for the training, for the inferencing, to be able to handle, it's basically the volume and speed that we're up against. And so I see these companies continue to grow together. It was kind of like the story Jensen told about all the different companies that are coming together to make these systems and build them to scale. They even showed a metaverse, omniverse version of how they're building these data centers. I know this is a little tangential, but what he really did double down on was the collaboration that is required, whether it's building these racks in these data centers, or the collaboration across the software ecosystem to deliver the most secure and productive software to the enterprises.
And in addition to all of that, also this move into autonomous and robotics with the deals with Uber to build the largest network of robo-taxis, and also I think autonomous deliveries, and also Joby for autonomous flights. What's your take on NVIDIA's move into the robotics space, and that is a potential growth driver as well?
Yeah, that's a great one. NVIDIA has to start to talk to the world about where these next trillion-dollar markets are. We mentioned that $500 billion in just data center, but the real opportunity here, if they want to keep growing, because now that they're at $5 trillion, well, we have to figure out how do they get to 6. Naming the next market where there's over $1 trillion, and I believe, and we believe at Futurum, that physical AI, robotics, and autonomy is a bigger opportunity than the data center. The scale of this is going to be larger. It's going to create a larger economic opportunity. And if you think about all of that, now he's identified another. He's got the robo-taxi, sort of the autonomous vehicles, but now you got humanoid robots and all the AI at the edge and manufacturing. Multi-trillion-dollar market there, multi-trillion-dollar market in data center. And you notice he teased a lot of quantum as well, which is going to be something that's going to grow quite a bit over the next 3 or 4 years. He definitely made sure the world understood that NVIDIA has a part to play there as well.
So you just gave a timeline on the quantum of 3 to 4 years. In terms of this humanoid robot play, which we certainly are seeing also with Tesla and Elon Musk saying he's not going to build his humanoid robot army, what do you think the timeline is for that vision becoming a reality when it is specifically for NVIDIA?
Well, they're doing it right now. That's the beauty of having that kind of full stack that NVIDIA often talks about, not just hardware, but really software. They're building the compute for the edge, but the CUDA ecosystem where all these developers are building, they're building software for all of the companies that are building humanoid robots and humanoid autonomous technologies. So if you think about it, they're monetizing it today, and then as these start to hit scale, as whether it's the Tesla Optimus or Boston Dynamics or any of these companies that are planning to build and develop humanoids, you know that NVIDIA will likely have a part, whether it's the hardware, whether it's the software. So they have a lot of different ways to monetize this, and it's accelerating right now.
Daniel, thank you so much for being with us today to talk all of these headlines that we've been getting, some massive market moves off of them as well, particularly for NVIDIA. That's Daniel Newman, the CEO of Futurum.